Hey all! After I had asked you all what kind of video you wanted to see next from me, I made a poll on my community tab. You decided you want to see a video of me discussing doll collecting and mental health. I remember that on a previous video of mine, one of you viewers asked me whether I wanted to make a video on doll collecting and how lonely it can be and loneliness in doll collecting. And that kind of started me brainstorming a video idea in my head where I wanted to talk about how doll collecting affects one's own mental health. Now, a big disclaimer beforehand, I'm of course no expert when it comes to the topic of mental health. All of the things that I'm going to be talking about in this video are my own perspective and my own experiences, as well as my own doll collecting journey, because everybody has their own journey when it comes to dolls and how it relates to their own mental health. Let's start off by something recent. You might have noticed me making more videos that are not filmed, but more like a slideshow or video clips edited together where I'm giving a voiceover, and part of the reason why I'm doing that is because it's always very, uncomfortable sitting in front of the camera. But right now it's also winter and fall weather here in Northern Europe, and there's very little in terms of sunlight and sun rays, which can also affect my mood. But it also affects the ability to film videos, so I can't make use of actual sunlight and I have to use other light sources like my ring light here instead, which is kind of, annoying, and it even puts an even bigger lens on the fact that I don't have sunlight to lighten up my own mood. Sometimes you have mood swings, sometimes you're in the mood to be like, hey, let's make a video, and sometimes you're like, nah, I just want to lay on my couch and do nothing. And as for me being not very comfortable in front of the camera is because, doll content creating has made me even more self-conscious than I was before. And I'm actually quite content with me and the way that I look or the way that I present myself. But being actually able to compare my appearance on film when I have videos from 6 months ago compared to now, I can actually see kind of like a weight fluctuation, and that's kind of something that makes me very self-conscious. So we have so many issues that one can have when it comes to their own mental health, like body image issues, you can have anxiety, you can have a feeling of loneliness that might totally envelop you. You can have mood swings, you can have depression, and I feel like having a hobby like doll collecting is something that can have a positive effect on you. Collecting dolls, playing around with dolls, as well as styling dolls, restyling dolls, making content about dolls is something that I always look forward to. Many of us are in the trenches of capitalism and have to go to our 9-to-5 job. We might have to work jobs that we don't really want to, but we have to be able to get by. So this is kind of like an escape for us, a way that for a short period of time we're able to be like, forget about everything negative that's going on in our own life, in society, in the world. There might be very little in terms of just beauty in one's life, but having like dolls you can look at and see on your shelf and that you're like, oh my god, they're just so gorgeous, they're just so beautiful, they just brighten up our drab and grey life with their own colorfulness, and therefore kind of like improving our own very drab and grayscale life, therefore maybe improving our own mental health. It can also be a very creative outlet for us. For years I was really having this mantra of I have to stop just consuming and doing nothing, and I have to start producing. I have to be producing stuff in order to have a creative outlet to get my creativity out there. And with dolls, and especially fashion dolls, there's the element of fashion, which I was always very passionate about. So having the ability to actually create looks for them is something that I might have wanted to do in my day-to-day life, but wasn't able to actually end up having as a profession. but now my hobby is kind of like funneling this creativity that I always had inside of me. I remember way back when, I don't know, when I was in my mid-20s maybe, I was always lying in my bed and just going through all of these alternative bizarro world scenarios where I was like, okay, if I had done this and that back in my college days or my school days or when I was younger, it might have improved my life. I might have made the right decision instead of like wasting my life like I am doing now. But over the past couple of years, as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more happy and more content with me and myself and my surroundings, this completely disappeared. Now, of course, there's stuff like anxiety. I do have anxious episodes from time to time, but I've started to be able to go through a thought process where I'm very aware of my own body functions and my own thought process, in a sense that I'm able to kind of like defeat the anxious episode. But for people who are not able to have these instruments and tools to fight off anxiety, I think dots can have a very calming effect on them. But yes, when we talk about loneliness, there's also something that I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, because after I had smashed my thumb, which is not a very beautiful sight, this kind of put a damper on my own ability to do certain things. And as I'm single and living on my own, it kind of put a amplifying glass on this fact, and I noticed that I might be too hyper independent, which is sort of like the 180 polar opposite to being codependent, where with my hyper independence it might lead to me kind of pushing people away, being very secretive about certain things, maybe being secretive about the fact that I'm collecting dots and creating content about dots, because I'm not really going to every single person and telling them all about this. Well, there are a lot of people who know of this, because I'm, like you can see me here on this internet platform, because I do not have a problem with it. But part of me not sharing it may be due to my hyper independence, which might have its root in any kind of thing, maybe in some trauma that I do not have dealt with. Because I'm always trying to make everything on my own. I'm not very open to other people maybe. And when it comes to dating and dating life, this might also be kind of like a factor in me being a bit more closed off. Because as a hyper-independent person, you're looking at kind of like codependent people maybe, or needy people, in a way that's very like, that's such a turn off. And you might generally be very arrogant in a way that you're like, it's better when I do it myself instead of having somebody else do it, because I know for a fact that they're not able to do it as good as I am able to do it. When that really sucks so much energy out of me, because I have to do so many things on my own. But I do not really feel lonely. I think you have to differentiate between being alone, but being content with yourself, and being lonely, where you're not actually content with your aloneness. And you want to change that up, but you're not able to do that. And that might really frustrate you and get to you in a way that might depress you or make you very hard on yourself and down on yourself. And you're like, why am I so lonely? Why am I so alone but unhappy while being alone? And doll collecting might be a very niche hobby where you're not able to have a community in your day-to-day real life, but you're able to grow a community online, which I'm very happy about having been able to do. Finding people who share the same passion as you are, finding people you are able to be chatting about the most ridiculously niche and obscure stuff, and they're on the same page as you are, and they're on the same level in terms of passion and love for the hobby as you are, is something that I really enjoy. Now, we did talk a lot about things that might have a positive effect in terms of having doll collecting as a hobby and mental health, but there also might be some detrimental effects that it could be putting on you in terms of maybe revving up other kind of character traits or more or less mental health things that you have going on, like maybe it could amp up your addictive nature in the sense that you're maybe going overboard on your hoarding tendencies and therefore maybe turning the collecting hobby into something that might have a very detrimental effect in your day-to-day life, where you're actually not able to pay your bills, but you bought tons of dolls instead. And in that sense, I think collecting hobbies are all the same. So it's not just doll collecting where this might be the case. In my teenage years, I used to collect movies and CDs on various kinds of formats. But then when I went to move out of home for university, I sold it all off. And during my 20s, I actually lived the minimalist kind of lifestyle where a mattress was enough for me to have and a desk maybe, because that was kind of trendy at the time. But when I was finishing up university and I moved out of there and started having my own job, I started collecting video games to kind of like heal my inner child. But then that video game hobby also kind of slowly evaporated, because that was the point where I was like, okay, I need to stop passively just playing video games and it amounting to nothing. I will need to stop just consuming. I need to be starting something creative in the sense that I need to be producing stuff, which led to the doll collecting hobby, which was also a passion of mine always, and which combines so many different things that I have a passion about, which is film and video, which is fashion and beauty and styling. But again, how can it negatively maybe affect me, in the sense that with the content creation, I'm always opening myself to judgment. It can maybe affect my thought process in the sense that I might edit myself and edit my thoughts. It can affect my body image. It can affect so many things. So that might also affect one's mental health. And having doll collecting as an outlet for one to overcome maybe childhood trauma might also lead down to a path where you, instead of dealing with it, might be suffocating it. And like I had said, with collecting hobbies in general, there's probably a tendency to maybe go overboard in your consumption, whether it's video game collecting or doll collecting, just collecting physical objects in general. I know that there's now the maximalist trend. When I was the age where a lot of people are now, who are into maximalism, it was trendy for my generation to be into minimalism. So having wall-to-walls full of collages and dolls and other paraphernalia is actually something to aspire, and it has become an aesthetic of its own. I think I've rambled about a lot of topics without getting to the point, but I hope that you might have found some kind of things that you might have thought were interesting. And if you would like to discuss more about them with me, you can do so in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in my next one.